I really just have given up on making videos about stuff other people care about. But it's Halloween and I'm gonna treat myself. Scream Queen is a term for a woman best known for appearing in horror movies. We have a special term for that because there aren't a lot of other genres that let women scream and fight and struggle for their survival and win. And the reason for that is a bunch of patriarchal bullshit views on virtue, but the end result is a lot of representation for a group that's kind of starved for it. And my personal favorite Scream Queen is Jessica Harper. So let's start this discussion of Jessica Harper's wonderful career by talking about her appearance in the seminal classic, Woody Allen's Love and Death.
I recall the rigors of military training.
Okay, so I have weird parents. They showed me movies you probably shouldn't show a 5 to 11-year-old, and they're New Yorkers, so there was a lot of Seinfeld and a lot of Woody Allen in our household before the news. And Love and Death is one of my actual favorite movies, even with him in it. It's a screwball comedy, but it's kind of like a lot more thoughtful than you would expect of a screwball comedy. He goes into some deep thoughts and stuff, and it's really funny. Like, it goes into all sorts of weird comedy directions and nails a lot of them.
Shall we say pistols at dawn?
Well, we can say it. I don't know what it means, but we can say it.
As for Jessica Harper's role in the movie, it's minor. She's in an early scene, and then she's in 2 later scenes where she has to hold her own pretty well against Diane Keaton. She has to do a really dry delivery of some pretty silly stuff. She acquits herself admirably.
Tatiana's sister loves Trigorin like a brother. Trigorin's brother is having an affair with my sister, who he likes physically, but not spiritually.
It's not a star-making performance or anything, but if you knew her from her later stuff, you would recognize her and be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Can't really say you'd remember her if this was your first introduction to her. No. That kind of star-making performance would have to come from the cult classic, Phantom of the Paradise. Okay, so Phantom of the Paradise is just straight up one of my favorite movies of all time. It is this balls-to-the-wall gonzo satire of 70s music industry culture, and it takes major inspiration from classic literature, like obviously Phantom of the Opera, but also the picture of Dorian Gray. It is wackadoo in all the amazing ways, and Jessica Harper gets a big, important starring role. She is, of course, the young ingenue who catches the eye of the Phantom, and there's not really a lot of meat on the bone for her acting necessarily, but it absolutely showcases her singing ability.
Well, you told me one time that you'd be somebody, that you weren't working just to survive, but you're working so hard that you don't even know you're alive.
She gets 2 major songs in this movie and absolutely blows them out of the water. The second time she goes on stage to sing, she is taking over for what is essentially early Kiss. This guy came on stage and had himself constructed of body parts they ripped out of the crowd, and he gets replaced by her. She just has to go on stage and sing to a crowd who came for Kiss, and she does a love ballad and blows it out of the water. I believed that crowd was satisfied with the replacement act. Frankly, Phantom of the Paradise would probably be her breakout role if not for the fact that she was in another Technicolor dreamscape of a movie. Shark Treatment! Did you know that Rocky Horror Picture Show had a sequel? I don't blame you if you didn't. It didn't have Tim Curry in it, but it did have the same director and a lot of the same creative crew, and it even stars Janet and Brad again. Just recast, and taking over the role of Janet from Susan Sarandon is Jessica Harper! Okay, Susan Sarandon has a really specific singing voice.
Touch me, I wanna be dirty.
And Jessica Harper has a really different singing voice.
Dancing in the kitchen or crying in the bedroom all night.
Okay, it's kind of a weird recasting, but Jessica Harper is so good in this movie. It's exceedingly difficult, though, to explain what shock treatment is about. It's about an entire town that decides to live in a television studio for, I don't know, a week, a month, I'm not sure, to watch their local television program run through their sets, and it's like a commentary on reality television before that was a thing. It's weird. They get roped into this game show and her husband gets kidnapped and like put in jail for medical treatment. I can't even begin to describe it. It's mostly about Janet, Jessica Harper, being seduced by fame and fortune, and it is bizarre.
Hi, Brad. I've just come to tell you how fabulous I am.
And I kind of like it a little bit more than Rocky Horror Picture Show. Rocky Horror Picture Show is a classic. People love it for a very good reason, but Shock Treatment is weirder in a way that feels really intentional, and it's hitting some actually really good satire without the kind of weird transphobia. And also, the songs are a little bit better. I'm sorry, please don't kill me. Rocky Horror Picture Show has a couple absolute bangers, but Shock Treatment just has much better songs overall. In fact, there's one point where a garage band comes into play. This was made in the 1980s. I swear to God, they're doing grunge! But no one has seen this movie. It is not well known. You'd think being attached to a cult icon like Rocky Horror Picture Show would give it some cred, but I guess it's a little too weird for midnight screenings. I don't know. So this isn't the movie that made her big. Of course the movie that made her big is Suspiria.
Hey, listen. There they go. Right on schedule.
Okay, if you're a horror nerd like me, Suspiria is definitely the movie you know Jessica Harper for. I didn't see it until a couple years ago, though, and frankly, this list was organized by the order in which I saw her movies. Also, Phantom of the Paradise and Love and Death came out before Suspiria, so even though it's definitely her breakout, it's not her first role. As for Suspiria itself, well, they definitely had a lot of money for those gel covers on the lights. It is really colorful, and the sets are really cool. It's got that... It actually does achieve a weird dreamlike ambiance. A lot of movies that claim to be dreamlike are really just slow and paced badly. But this one actually does achieve a lot of dreamlike, probably because Jessica Harper spends a lot of the movie getting drugged and not knowing what's going on. But as a story, it's kind of basic. Spoilers, it's just witches. All the weird stuff happened because there be witches here. And then the movie's over, and I didn't find that very satisfying at all. It's not my favorite kind of movie. So after that set of sterling and legendary performances in cult movies, you'd really expect Jessica Harper to have a long and fruitful career, wouldn't you? Kinda. She definitely kept working through a lot of the 80s. Let's see, she was in My Favorite Year, Pennies from Heaven, The Blue Iguana. I've never heard of these. She was in another Woody Allen movie that I haven't seen, so it couldn't have been that good. She did some TV work, not really a lot of big appearances, but she was on the Gary Shandling show like a bunch of times. I have footage of it.
You sing like an angel. And you don't waste water?
That's great. That's really swell, pal. But listen, I gotta put the clothes in the dryer, okay? So I'll see you later.
I didn't know the Gary Shandling show was a thing. I can't even really tell you who Gary Shandling is. He looks familiar. She was also in an episode of Tales from the Crypt that really reminded me of the movie Stuck on You. Maybe they're based on the same urban legend. I don't know. By the 90s, her starring roles had really tapered off. She was in Minority Report, in a role none of you were going to guess. I'm not going to tell you. Try and guess. You'll be wrong. And after 2000, she just really stopped appearing in movies all that much. A couple movies, but the only really big movie she was in was the Suspiria remake. Which, for the record, I think is better than the original. Now in '89, she got married to this guy named Thomas Rothman. He is apparently a big major executive. He was big at Fox Searchlight, and now he works at Sony. So, they had 2 daughters. So yeah, I can imagine that would take up a bunch of your time. And by the late 90s, she'd started doing different things. She wrote a couple of children's books with silly names like Underwear on My Head, and some children's albums. In 2010 or so, she started a cooking blog and wrote a cookbook. So it's not like she hasn't been doing things, it's just she hasn't really been in movies despite her really, really big splash early on in her career. But as Carrie Fisher noted, Hollywood really stops hiring women after a certain age. So, were we, as audience members, cheated out of just a great series of performances from Jessica Harper in crazy cult movies? No, not really. Between Shock Treatment, Phantom of the Paradise, and Suspiria, that's 3 really good cult horror movies that would make most other Scream Queens jealous. You really have to look for like a Jamie Lee Curtis or a Sigourney Weaver to top that resume. And even though she never really became the biggest thing, she seemed to give her best whenever she was in a movie. So if you really like Jessica Harper, you can find her movies and enjoy them. I don't know if I can really put it into words, but Jessica Harper's performances to me were always this weird combination of wide-eyed innocence who's also snarky and doesn't have time for this. Like, there's just something about the way she acts that portrays that she is very much a young ingenue, but she's ready for when the shit hits the fan. I don't know, maybe it's just the New Yorker in my heritage, but something about Jessica Harper's performances just really appeals to me. In terms of the movies I've really highlighted here, I'd recommend Shock Treatment the most, because that's the one where she swings the hardest as an actor, but obviously you should see Phantom of the Paradise. It is fantastic, it's just not quite as big a starring role for her. And she deserves our praise, queen that she be. Happy Halloween. Got one more for you this month.